Pat Hogan. I'm the chair of the Economic Development Committee of the Common Council. I'm joined here by Councilor Schultz, Councilor Monto, and we're going to talk about the legislations presented to us from the city, from the mayor's office regarding cigarette legislation. I'm going to lead off with Greg from the Law Department. Why don't you give us a little overview of this? This will be a local law, which means we'll introduce and table probably today, but why don't you give us an overview if you could?
Sure. Great. Thanks, Councilor. Greg Fair, Assistant Corporation Counsel for the city. So the proposed legislation that we hear about today is a local law that would require retailers within the city that are selling tobacco products and or vape products to apply for a local license from the city to continue selling those products. And the sort of general basis for that is the public health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of the city. So what the local law also does is it creates distancing requirements for the retailers. So they cannot be located within 750 feet of a school or a public park or another similar retailer, selling a state licensed retailer selling tobacco or vape products. And it creates a cap on the number of licenses that we're going to issue. And then over time, it reduces the number of licenses that we'll issue so that we stop the proliferation of the smoke shops popping up around the city. So the reduction will occur because over time, for every 2 stores that close or every 2 licenses that are no longer active, we're only going to issue 1 new license moving forward in the future. So we'll reduce the number, as I said, of the licensed, the city licensed stores. And then we have criteria for getting our license. It includes, it's an annual license, first of all, I should say. They have to come to us every year to get it. And there are various requirements. They can't owe money to the city, in terms of taxes, that sort of thing. They can't be a nuisance property. They can't have outstanding code violations. Those are all going to be requirements for the retailers to get our license.
Okay. That's a great overview, and I obviously a lot of us are concerned with the vaping products and also with the use of cigarettes by some of our preteens and our teenagers. And to that, I have asked people from the Public Health Department to give us a little presentation. I appreciate you all being here. So if you want to come up here and introduce yourself, and we'll go through the slide presentations, then we'll bring our city officials back up here in order to answer any questions specifically about the legislation. Introduce yourself now. Even though I met you, I can't remember your names. I just met you 5 minutes ago.
Good morning. My name is Karen Johnson. I'm the program coordinator for Tobacco Free CNY.
Good morning, everybody. Antonio Palmer, public health educator for Tobacco Free CNY.
Next slide. All right, before we get started, I just wanted to give you a little bit of an overview about what Tobacco Free CNY is. We are a program of the Onondaga County Health Department. Our funding is provided by the New York State Department of Health Bureau of Tobacco Control, and our name of our grant is Advancing Tobacco-Free Communities. Our goal, of course, is to decrease illness, disability, and death related to commercial tobacco use and secondhand smoke exposure, either in the housing sections or in public parks and things like that. So we address retail tobacco as well as tobacco-free outdoor spaces and smoke-free housing. Okay, just an overview of the issue from a wide scope. Onondaga County adult tobacco use rate is currently at 12%. If you look at the data for the city of Syracuse, currently we're around 21.3%. So we are seeing quite a difference between the county as a whole and the city. If you look at the youth tobacco rate, and unfortunately we don't have this data on a local level, but we do see New York State youth using tobacco at about 20.8%. Overall, with 18% of that, almost 19% of that being e-cigarette use. and only a smaller amount, 2.1, being the combustible cigarettes. Tobacco use is still the leading cause of preventable death in our country, with about 28,000 New Yorkers dying every year from smoking-related illnesses. Just to break it down a little bit more, the smoking rates we see within the city. If you look at our slides, we have the zip codes broken up by the different levels. Overall, we said 21%, but we do see pockets where we're seeing even higher than that. Next slide. As far as the number of active tobacco retailers, we currently have, Onondaga County as a whole has about 411 tobacco retailers. The city is seeing about half of that is found within the city. So even though we have about a third of the population in the city, we are seeing close to 50% of the tobacco retailers found in the city. And if you look at the density compared to the retailers per square mile, within the city, we're at almost 8 tobacco retailers per square mile, and within the county, it's 0.5. Next slide.
So one of the issues that we wanted to touch on today is the effect and the impact on youth. So tobacco use rates, where retailers are located right now, it is a major issue. And then when we're considering kind of what our youth are exposed to, again, I was just having a conversation with this great individual back here about how literally there is a tobacco retailer across the street from her school. The issues that it poses to our youth, our preteens, teenagers, young adults, it's very apparent. So youth are more likely to experiment, especially with these flavored products that are currently being promoted by the tobacco industry. And then smokers, of course, the more stores, retailers there are, of course, the more likely people are to use these products overall. And of course, that makes it just as hard for people to quit. Next slide.
I know this looks kind of small on the screen, and I do have some handouts with it bigger if you need it. Yep, you have it. Okay. This is a map that's showing the number of tobacco retailers. The red dots are the tobacco retailers within the city. The little flags are the schools within the city, and the green areas are the parks. So if you look at that, you can see that a lot of them can be right next to each other, especially in the north section and the west and southwest area of the city. We are seeing quite a big concentration with some. The yellow circle around the retailers is the 750 feet buffer that the city is proposing. So you do see some of those parks and schools falling into that 750 buffer zone. Next slide. Why is this a concern to the health department? This explains right here. If we look at the areas where we do see the most tobacco retail, those are the same areas where we are seeing the highest rates of smoking in adults. So again, it's the north section, the west section, and southwest section. So the number of retailers is directly correlating with the smoking rates in those areas.
So when we talk about issues as far as retailers and advertising, tobacco retailers are the primary marketing venue when we talk about where these products are sold. Obviously, if you go to any convenience store, anything like that, or sometimes even the Dollar General, you can find these products, but it's these retailers, these tobacco shops that are being set up on every corner. These are the primary retailers. Of course, perpetuating social norms about tobacco use, making it seem normal because, again, the proliferation, our communities here are really inundated right now by these shops because they're popping up on every corner now. A very interesting statistic that we came across, about 50% of youth visit stores with tobacco products at least once a week. So you have to consider a lot of these youth children that live in these neighborhoods, some, of course, below economic status. You know, they go to these stores daily. These are the products that they're seeing each and every day. These are the products that they're seeing their peers, adults, people they look up to use each and every day. So you have to think about the impact there. And then, of course, less tobacco retailers means less exposure. So a picture here, this is basically the setup that you'll see in any tobacco shop or any store that sells these products. And in the tobacco world, we call this the power wall. This is how the tobacco industry lures and attracts their customers to these products. Again, the flashy displays, the colors, things that they know are eye-catching, again, to rope people in and get them hooked on these products. Next slide. So when we go even deeper, we talk about health inequities. So tobacco companies have historically over-promoted, I like to say, or you can say targeted racial and ethnic groups. You talk about the African-American community, the menthol cigarette. Statistic right now, about 93% of African-Americans who currently smoke use menthol cigarettes the first time they ever use, okay? Again, the menthol cigarette was promoted directly at certain groups. We talk about African-Americans, LGBTQ community. Retailers are often concentrated, again, in these low economic or socioeconomic areas. So when you consider people's income, their occupation, their level of education, these things do have effect, again, in relation to these retailers and how they like to promote their products. Prices of tobacco products tend to be lower in these lower socioeconomic communities. Promotion of flavored products. I know we're not going to get into flavors big today, but that is clearly an issue right now, especially amongst our young people. Again, just another way for the tobacco industry to attract their customers. And then disparate populations having higher incidences of tobacco-related diseases. Talk about cancer, heart disease, strokes. Again, I like to think of tobacco as the triple threat. Okay, it's still the leading preventable cause of disease, death, and disability. So this is a big issue of large proportions. So benefits of tobacco licensing, I want to say this is quite straightforward. Reduce the number of sales to minors. The less shops there are, the less likely these kids are to be exposed to these products. Reducing youth initiation, less tobacco advertising exposure, and then limit how close retailers can be to schools. I know in one of those previous slides, we had that 750 feet buffer as far as retailers in relation to schools. Keep in mind the state law is actually 1,500 feet. So ultimately, that would be the goal, to get these shops as far as away from youth, schools, playgrounds, daycares, anything like that.
Just to talk a little bit more about the distancing guidelines, by passing a licensing proposal, you're able to kind of determine where these places can set up. So distance from schools and public parks can be considered, as well as distance from other retailers. This in turn can reduce the clustering in these communities that we do see. Most of this clustering is being done in those disparate communities that Antonio was just addressing. Setting a cap on the total number of retailers so that we don't see this huge influx of vape shops and tobacco retailers in our community, and reducing the total over time is a great way to address without impacting current businesses, but going forward, you're taking the reins so that you can control when and where these licenses are given out. Next slide. Just to mention briefly, the County Health Department does have a program called ATUPA, which is the Adolescent Tobacco Use Prevention Act. It is part of public health law that regulates the sale of tobacco and vaping products to reduce their access by youth and young adults. This program is run out of our Onondaga County Health Department Division of Environmental Health. What they do is they go out with youth and they complete compliance checks to local retail establishments to identify stores selling to minors. I mentioned this program only because this could be an asset as far as the licensing in the city of Syracuse. There would definitely be a partnership between the two so that we could work together to achieve our goals. And if you're wondering, is this something new that's happening? We are seeing more and more communities addressing this by addressing the retail density. Buffalo, City of Buffalo just addressed this past May. Town of Salina just passed a licensing and a zoning this past December. So we are, you know, it's not new to around here, and we are seeing more and more communities considering this as a way to address both the health disparities and the, you know, the number of tobacco retailers that they are seeing in their communities. Next slide.
Have you proposed this to the county at large to do this across the entire county?
We have discussed it internally. It has not been brought to the full county as of yet. You guys have kind of taken the lead on that.
Town of Salina is the only town or village in the county that's so far walked this path, correct?
In this county, yes.
Okay.
Yes. 62% of Onondaga County adults actually are in favor of tobacco products in schools in stores near schools being limited. So we do have support. This is from an adult tobacco survey we did this past year. So we have over 62% of people that are in support of this legislation. And that same number actually agree that, reducing the number of retail is a good way to address how adults and youth are seeing products. So this is a unique opportunity for you to take a look at the community, to shape the tobacco retail environment how you would like to see it shaped, and really make a difference with those to protect youth in disadvantaged communities. Next slide.
Did you solicit feedback for that 62%? Like, who did you survey?
We actually hired with a contractor to do a survey. So it was all scientific methods and everything, and we could share the results of that survey if you're interested.
Okay, that'd be great.
Karen, Antonia, has there been any surveys, nationwide surveys regarding amount of income derived from the sale of tobacco shops as far as in the stores? How much of the percentage of their retail income comes from that? Do we know? I mean, is there any studies nationwide have been?
Nothing distinctly that we know of.
What I've read is that a lot of people use the tobacco products to lure people into the store to buy other stuff. So I don't think that's their main moneymaker, but I do believe that they use that as a way to get people into the stores.
There's a paradigm of young people going in to buy candy or buying sodas or something like that, and then being exposed to this is, I think that's what the issue that we're really worried about. So,
Right, absolutely.
Okay. Well, I appreciate, this was terrific. I appreciate you coming here. You've obviously done a lot of work on this, so it's good to see this county-city cooperation. I like
Yes,
that.
and moving forward, we're more than willing to assist in any way when as we can. And I think if this does pass, our Environmental Health Bureau will be actively involved as well. So
Thank you. Greg, why don't you and Jake sort of, we're interested in the enforcement of this once we pass it. Particularly, like, I'm interested in how do we handle somebody who's been selling, they happen to have a store across down the street from Fowler School, and they already got a license, state license, and we're going to have them have a city license, but they might be violation of the 750-foot rule.
So we do have a grandfathering provision in the local law that is going to give current retailers that would be in violation of those distances 4 months to come to us to apply to get the local license. So if they meet all the requirements of the local law, they apply within that 4-month window, we will issue them the license. So that's our sort of grandfathering provision that we do have in here. And then every year, as long as they meet all the requirements, when they reapply, they can continue to operate there. If for some reason they lose their license or they don't apply in the future, then they would be prohibited from continuing to operate there in violation of the distances. If somebody gets our license and then they end up violating our local law in some way, we have provisions in here where the license can be suspended or revoked. They can be fined various amounts depending on the violation or the frequency of the violation. And then if somebody just doesn't apply for our license and they continue to sell these products, we do have a provision in here where similar to our C of U ordinance, using the New York State Property Maintenance Code, we could go in there and close the business as an unlawful structure because they don't have our license, and that's how our C of U ordinance works as well.
So when they apply for the license, Jake, do we do an inspection beforehand to make sure they're compliant with all the other city ordinances? Is that how we envision it?
Yeah, so this would work the same way as certificate of use. So they're going to be mandated to get an inspection. So we'll send fire prevention, fire marshals, along with code enforcement inspector out. It's key to note that this is another tool in the toolkit to hold these sort of establishments accountable. And I would group it together with our other efforts that we've done, in conjunction with support from the council with, around cannabis, around nuisance abatement issues, some of the things that you see, at some of these establishments. I don't want to group all of them together, but I don't think it's any secret to anybody in this room that we've seen some troubling incidents at some of these locations throughout the city. So this is another effort to control that and prevent incidents from happening. And this could be violent incidents. It could be things of blight, like trash and debris, things like that, litter that proliferate at some of these locations. But they will be required to also have a certificate of use, because if you're a licensed tobacco retailer, there are some that are just doing, I guess, tobacco, but others are typically a food store as well. So they're selling other products, and they are requiring to have a certificate of use. If they're in a mixed-use building, they could also be mandated to have a 3-year inspection of the entire building. So many of these are just going to be business proprietors applying for this. I guess some could be the building owner as well, but most probably won't be. So they'll need to apply for this along with every other inspection that's periodically required, as noted. And that gives us the tools to get in to make sure that they're operating lawfully and within the bounds of all of our laws, to make sure that they're getting this license, operating within the rules and requirements of certificate of use, but also not selling other illegal products like cannabis. So we're looking forward to hopefully rolling this into all of that and giving us more inspections within these establishments to make sure that they're operating lawfully.
So the license is tied to the person, not the establishment. Or, I mean, if he sells to another person, that license doesn't. That person has to reapply, or does it go away? How's that work?
Sure. Greg Fairgain, Assistant Corporation Counsel. So our license is tied to the state license. So the 198 number that Ms. Johnson provided us with, those are the state licensed retailers, tobacco and/or vape retailers in the city of Syracuse. So to sell those products, you need to have what's called a certificate of registration from the New York State Department of Taxation and Finance. And so those 198 would have that state license. So our local license is tied to that state license. So you have to have the entity that holds that state license is going to be the entity that's coming to us to get our local license. Our local license is largely non-transferable, so it can't be sold to another business.
See, that's the point I was getting at, because the state license is, it's different, but we're tied to it.
Yep.
So the local license, if say this person goes out of business, he can't transfer the local license anywhere, because the state license is under somebody else's name.
Correct.
Well,
yeah.
technically, that person could get another state license, right?
Yeah. So if they need to get it, so if they need to get another state license, they would need to come to us to get another local license. It has to match up. If I'm answering your question correctly.
Yeah. Would we grant it or not?
Well, that's going to depend on our cap number and if there are available licenses.
Okay, that's what I meant. So,
Yeah.
okay.
It's also key to note that should a retailer lose their tobacco license, they could still potentially operate, as a corner food store or as a retail market or whatever. They would just lose their local license to sell tobacco products, but they could still have chips, soda, gum, stuff like that, and that would continue with the certificate of use. So 2 separate things, but this is definitely a part of the overall program that we'll be enforcing on these establishments.
Well, to that point, Mr. Dishaw, I like this particular clause. A violation of the tobacco retail license holder of any federal, state, or local law regulation pertaining to trafficking and contraband covered products, the payment of collection taxes on covered products, the display of covered products. This trading contraband covered products, how do we determine that? I mean, I talked to Chief Schaaf about this before, because I know other counselors we're also concerned about the legal substances that we continually get reports on that these stores are selling. And so how do we determine that? Because obviously that would trigger, if we were able to determine that, that would trigger the losing of the license, correct? To sell cigarettes,
Yeah,
yes.
I'll let Greg speak to that.
So just to make sure we're clear, so covered product is a defined term in our local law.
I'm looking at the contraband part, Greg.
Yeah, so
And I'm assuming that's a legal covered product, right?
yeah, so what that means, contraband covered products, that would be somebody that's selling tobacco products illegally.
Oh, so this is
Tobacco.
specifically to tobacco? It isn't
Yes,
like-
that provision is specifically to the covered products that this local law is regulating, which would be tobacco and vape and things that are regulated by the ATUPA statute that was mentioned earlier.
I mean,
But if
Yeah,
if
go
I
on,
can,
go ahead.
to your point, yes, if they were in violation of any other state law, state, federal, local law, which would include the sale of, illegal, whatever illegal substances might be there, that would also be a basis. Yeah, it would be in violation of our
Deputy
local
Mayor
law.
wants to desperately talk about this, I imagine.
Inclusive of violating the existing state laws and selling loosies and single cigarettes and that type of thing.
Okay, Lucy's and cigarette, what about those THC gummies and things like that that I get reports upon?
Yeah, so again, this would tie into other laws that we have on the book. So one, if we can establish that and prove that that's happening, that would be in violation of our recently passed marijuana law, cannabis law, where and also it would include points being added to their certificate of use. So possible revocation of a revocation of their certificate of use and this tobacco license if we find them selling products that they don't have licenses to sell, which, as we know, if they're selling those sorts of products, they have to be licensed through New York State Office of Cannabis Management, and there's only one open at this time.
Oh, do we have the ability to determine those are illegal substances? Because what I hear is sometimes you have to have a testing kit or something like that. No?
So we spoke
can
about
you
this.
seize those and test them later?
We're not seizing or testing product, but we don't have to have the same. We're not pursuing them criminally for this. So if we're finding somebody selling, it's no different than me going into doing a certificate of use today at a store, for example, and finding flower buds or some form of edible cannabis product. We're not testing that. We're going to cite them for that and go after them.
And the citation would trigger maybe the revocation of their tobacco license, correct?
Moving forward, yeah, assuming they had one, but it would be no different than today. We would go after their certificate of use
Right.
license
And
as
not
well,
having
and
a
we
certificate
we
of
will
use.
too. This will be part of it as well. So, I think the challenge sometimes is some of these products are hidden behind a counter or not in plain sight. So, but like anything else, we will take complaints and tips from the public and constituents that have concerns.
Oh, I'm sorry, Alyssa, this is a public meeting, and we might have a public hearing on this, but we don't entertain all that. Alyssa and Colin and her daughter Kristen are here on a little summer excursion from school, and I appreciate you being here. But we this is a public meeting, so a public hearing we allow the people to speak.
Can I ask a quick question about the consideration for clustering and concentration of stores? So how will you handle that? Is there like equal distribution? Is that the goal, that we have 10 stores in the first district, 10 in the second, third, fourth, or how does that come into play? Does it at all?
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I would add is that I think the challenge with that is we need to wait and see who's going to actually respond that are already existing license holders, and I'll let Greg expand on anything, but we're going to give them an opportunity to be grandfathered in if they're so the existing locations, should they all apply, like they will maintain that license and the ability to maintain that into the future. But should they not maintain that, as Greg spoke to earlier, we'll see a decrease in the number of licenses available citywide. So I don't want to say that it's going to be equal by district. It's going to depend on a number of factors on how this launches, should this pass and move forward, and who chooses to maintain this moving forward. So
Have a total number in mind, don't you? Like a max number of?
Well, it
retailers?
would be capped at the number that it would be, 198, is that what it is?
Right.
Generally, the cap is 198, the current retailers in the city.
Right. So
And,
what-
and that number can only go down, or
Gonna
can't go
naturally
up.
Go down
Yeah.
because as one that is within the 750 feet of another one closes, you're not gonna put another one there. So naturally, we're gonna end up with less in the business corridors, right?
Well, but if somebody applies and they qualify and it's not at the 198, then there would be consideration for another store to
And be
open.
within 750 feet of another one, so the situations where we have one across the street from another will stop.
Right.
Eventually, not immediately, but eventually, you won't be able to put one across the street from another,
Correct.
right? Thank you, okay.
To Councilor Monto's point, Geddes Street is called a business corridor, but it seems to be a business corridor of just people selling cigarettes,
Wolf Street.
vaping, yeah. You know, so, you know, across from Delaware School where Alyssa's kids go, so any, you know, I think this is a great move by the administration as far as concern for public health, you know, healthy neighborhoods. I know we talk about like some of the initiatives that we've carried on with the Parks Department, City Parks Department, where we've been cognizant of the tree foliage in some neighborhoods. It certainly, as Antonio pointed out, these are concentrated in some of our most challenged neighborhoods, particularly in the Near West Side and the South Side, so.
Frankly, no matter what hat I'm wearing, I have never heard a advocate for this city beg for more of these stores. So, you know, and the target population is exactly what this gentleman just said. They're targeting the most vulnerable. You know, I remember the first time I was in and I'll go off on a tangent here. The first time that I was
Go off
ever in
on
a
a
gay
tangent.
bar at 21 years old, there was a Newport cigarettes were advertising inside of the bar and actually giving away samples. And this is, well, I won't age myself here, but like it's a real thing that they're targeting people that they expect to buy the product. So I like it.
You have any questions, Councilor Schultz? Anything else you want to add from the staff? I appreciate you putting this all together for us, too. And certainly, I'll introduce and table this. And then we'll be able to, the council will be able to, like, consider it in a couple of weeks. Okay? Thank you. Yeah, one other thing, Jake, you're going to have enough people to handle all this?
Yeah, you know, between Chief Davis's team of fire prevention, this will just fit in with our periodic inspections that are already mandated. It's 198, so we're already in these locations anyway for certificate of use every 2 years. If they need a certificate of compliance with, if they have mixed use above, it's every 3 years. So this is just an additional inspection, and you know, our team will be able to handle this with our workload already.
Thank you. I appreciate the administration pushing this forward, and I really appreciate our brothers and sisters from the county coming in and giving us a talk about public health. Thank you. So I'm going to call this to a close.